The new batch, the sky above Intergalactic Academy Prime, was not blue nor gray, but a strange mix of green and silver that shimmered like moving glass. Across the wide landing field, dozens of ships hovered down, slowly releasing ramps as groups of cadets stepped out one by one. Each group wore different uniforms, each marked by symbols of their worlds. Their faces showed wonder, confusion, and in some cases pride. These were the best young warriors of their home planets, and now they were ready to train at the most feared academy in the galaxy. At the far end of the landing field, a small group stepped out of a dark gray shuttle. Their uniforms were plain, their faces calm, their bodies covered in simple armor, not bright, not polished, just strong. They walked in silence, eyes scanning every corner but saying nothing. Other cadets looked at them with mild interest. Some whispered. Some chuckled. No one saw anything special. Then someone asked the obvious question in a soft voice, almost joking. "Those the humans?" The name spread quickly across the crowd. A few cadets laughed. One from a swamp world spoke with a smirk, saying he heard humans were wild creatures from a savage planet where beasts hunted people and the air itself was dangerous. Another added that humans probably joined the academy just to escape their awful world. A tall insectoid cadet buzzed its wings and said it would be fun to see how long the humans lasted. Whispers grew louder until the sound of heavy boots silenced them. An officer walked to the center of the platform. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. Silenced, the cadets stood straight. Some looked nervous. The officer paused and then pointed to the humans. "You see them? They have no medals, no shiny gear, no fanfare. But you should know this one thing. They come from a death world, not a training world. Not a peaceful moon. A planet where storms kill trees, where water can poison, where creatures with 10 legs eat you in your sleep. These cadets survived all of that before they ever held a weapon." The officer turned her gaze to the rest. "You may think they look weak. You may think they look too quiet. That is your mistake. Do not treat them as soft. Do not treat them as prey. Treat them with respect, or you will learn why their world has that name." She walked away, leaving a deep silence behind. Some cadets still looked unsure. Others looked at the humans with new eyes. But no one laughed again. Later, the new cadets were taken inside the academy. Long metal halls stretched across the station walls, lined with glowing signs in many languages. Robots hovered carrying crates while instructors barked orders. The human cadets followed quietly, always watching, always listening. One alien cadet tried to speak to them, but received only a polite nod in return. No one knew what they were thinking. The training hall was massive. At the center stood a tall screen showing a simulated battlefield. Rocky terrain, steep cliffs, sudden storms, and giant shapes moving in the fog. An instructor stood beside the screen, holding a device. "This will be your first test. A survival drill. No weapons, only basic gear. You will be dropped in groups. Work together or fail." That is all. One by one, the cadets stepped onto platforms that glowed and hummed. In seconds, they were transported into the simulation. The air shifted. The light changed. Now they stood under gray clouds and harsh wind. The game had begun. Some groups started arguing at once. Who should lead? Who would carry supplies? Which direction to go? First confusion, then disagreement. But the humans moved like shadows. They formed a line, eyes scanning the terrain, walking with purpose without words. One watched the front. One watched the back. The others took side positions. Their movements were smooth, their pace steady. An alien cadet from a frost world stumbled over a rock and fell into a hole. Panic rose. His group shouted at each other, unsure how to help. Before they could act, the human squad turned. 2 of them ran toward the hole, ignoring the warnings. The ground shook nearby. A large simulated beast approached. The humans moved faster. One jumped down to grab the trapped cadet. The other threw rocks to draw the beast away. They did not speak. They Did not hesitate, the alien cadet was pulled free just as the beast lunged. The humans pulled back just in time, vanishing behind rocks and rejoining their squad. The other groups watched in silence. Even the instructors monitoring the test seemed surprised. When the simulation ended, all cadets returned to the hall. Some looked tired, some looked angry, some confused. The humans looked the same as before. Calm, steady, quiet, the instructor from before returned. Her eyes moved over the crowd and rested on the humans. You all saw what happened. You saw who froze. You saw who acted. You saw who risked their lives for someone not even part of their team. That is not training. That is instinct. That is Deathworld instinct. The room stayed silent. No one mocked. No one laughed. The lesson was not loud, but it was clearing the days. That followed. Whispers still moved through the halls, but they were different now. The name Deathworld carried weight. The humans were still quiet, still distant, but now they were watched with caution. Their silence was no longer seen as weakness. It was seen as something else, something older, something darker, something earned. Though many cadets still did not understand why the humans were different, they had already begun to feel it. The fear had started. When It Gets Real days passed at the Galactic Academy Prime, and the cadets settled into their routines. Early morning drills, weight resistance tests, mental evaluations, and zero-gravity simulations became the rhythm of every cycle. The training was tough for all, but one group moved through it like they had done it before. The humans, they never asked questions, never complained, and never hesitated. While other cadets adjusted to the strange gravity shifts or struggled with breathing masks, the humans adapted like it was natural. Some cadets noticed this. Others pretended not to see. But the instructors noticed everything. One morning the cadets were summoned to the combat deck. Lights flickered in warning red, and an alarm rang out through the halls. The announcement came through in every language at once. Live combat simulation now active. Full field engagement. No weapons allowed. Victory. Through survival only, the cadets were rushed into drop pods. Each pod shook as it launched, spinning through space before landing inside the massive simulation dome. The doors opened, and the cadets stepped out into a nightmare. Jagged rocks covered the ground. The sky was dark with flashes of red lightning. Smoke rose from distant fires. Strange creatures howled in the distance. The terrain shifted every few minutes, changing the layout and confusing the groups. Chaos started quickly. A group from a water world tried to form a circle, but the ground beneath them cracked. They scattered. A team from a forest planet tried to climb a high ridge but slipped and fell down. Confusion grew. Shouts echoed. Groups broke apart. Cadets ran in different directions. In the middle of all this, the human cadets moved like a single thought. They never raised their voices. They stayed close to each other. Their eyes kept moving. They marked exits. They stayed away from open ground. They avoided moving alone. Their calm in the storm felt unnatural. A small group of insectoid cadets tried to take shelter inside a rock cave. The entrance collapsed after a nearby explosion. Dust filled the air. Panic spread. The group inside could not breathe. One tried to call for help, but the signal jammed. Without waiting, the human cadets changed direction. No orders, no hesitation. They ran toward the cave through falling debris and rising smoke. One carried a scanning device. Another carried a tool used to break hardened stone. They reached the blocked entrance and began working. Fast and focused, the instructors watched everything through the monitors. Some leaned forward. Others whispered to each other. One turned and said to another, they were not told about that cave. It was not part of the mission. How did they know? The answer came from the commander, because they are from a world that teaches them to listen to danger, not to ignore it back. In the simulation, the humans cleared a hole just wide enough for the insectoids to crawl out. Covered in dust and shaking, the alien cadets looked at their rescuers and for a moment said nothing. Then one of them bowed its head, Thank you. Human only nodded and turned back to rejoin the team. Time kept moving. The test got harder. Simulated. Enemy drones appeared. Flash floods swept the low ground. Smoke bombs filled the sky. Some cadets cried. Some froze. Others called for extraction. The human cadets kept moving. They reached high ground before anyone else. They built a small shelter using wreckage and stone. They found food hidden in the simulation and rationed it. They pulled 3 more cadets from danger before the test ended, when the recall signal came and the pods brought everyone back to the academy floor. The silence was heavy. Many cadets sat down without speaking. Some looked at their hands, some looked at nothing. The simulation had shown them something they did not expect. It showed them how quickly everything could fall apart, and it showed them who kept it together. Humans stood quietly near the wall. Their uniforms were covered in dust. One had a scratch across the cheek. Another had a burned sleeve, but none of them looked tired. None looked scared. They stood still and steady. The commander stepped forward. She looked over the group and said nothing for a long moment. Then she raised her voice. Today was not about victory. It was about response. It was about instinct under pressure. You were not told what would happen. You were not told where to go. You had to choose. She turned slowly. Some of you chose to hide. Some of you chose to run. Some chose to help. But only one group moved as if they had been through worse. The humans. She pointed. They found survivors. They built shelter. They managed resources. They used the terrain. They protected not only each other, but strangers. The room stayed silent. She walked toward the humans and stopped. Tell me what you saw out there. The lead human stepped forward and spoke softly. It was not worse than home. The answer sent a chill through the crowd. The commander nodded and turned back to the others. That is what a death world does. It does not create soldiers. It creates survivors. These cadets are young, but do not mistake that for weakness. They have survived things your minds cannot imagine. That day changed the way the other cadets looked at the humans. The mocking eyes turned into cautious glances. The whispers faded. The fear grew, but so did the respect. Some tried to speak to the humans now. Asked about Earth. Asked how they trained. Most of the answers were short. Some said nothing. But one message stayed clear in every word, every action, every silence. We are not here to impress you. We are here because we already survived what you fear, and that truth once seen could not be unseen. Breaking points. The academy changed after the simulation. Not all at once, but slowly in small ways. Cadets from other worlds started to step aside when the humans passed in the hall. Instructors began to observe the human group, more closely marking each of their movements. Some cadets still carried pride in their homeworld strength and honor, but none could ignore what they had seen. The Deathworld Cadets were different. During drills, the humans never raised their voices. They followed orders without question, but also acted without waiting when danger appeared. They moved like people who had learned long ago that hesitation meant death. Their calm was not empty. It was full of memory. One of the insectoid cadets who had been rescued during the last simulation now sat alone at night, staring out of the viewing port. A fellow cadet joined him and asked why he looked troubled. The insectoid spoke in a quiet tone. I saw it in their eyes. No fear, not even when the rocks fell and the beast roared. They looked at it like they had seen worse, like pain was not new. To them, rumors started again, but this time they were not jokes. They were questions. Some said Earth was a living nightmare where firestorms swept through cities. Others said the oceans of Earth held creatures larger than ships. A few believed. The humans had been trained from childhood in combat zones. The truth was not known, and the humans never explained. That made it worse. The mystery created fear. One day during rest cycle, an emergency alarm echoed through the academy. Red lights blinked, doors locked. Cadets ran to stations thinking it was another drill. But the voice that came next was not a recording. It was the voice of the command officer. This is not a test. A reactor malfunction in the lower wing has triggered a lockdown. Evacuation protocol is in effect. All cadets must return to their quarters and await instructions. Panic broke out the hallways filled with shouting. Some cadets ran without knowing where to go. Others tried to contact their instructors, but got no signal. Smoke began to rise from the lower level. Screams echoed through the comm lines. The malfunction had caused a chain reaction, and systems were failing one by one in the chaos. One group remained focused. The humans, they did not run. They did not shout. They looked at each other and then moved as one toward the lower wing. Other cadets saw them and tried to stop them. You were going the wrong way, but the humans did not respond. They passed through the corridors and down the emergency ladders. The smoke grew thick, but they had already covered their faces. The heat burned through the metal walls, but they kept moving. They reached a sealed door. Behind it was a group of cadets trapped with no oxygen and no exit. The humans worked fast. One checked the panel. Another connected wires to a portable unit. Two more braced the door inside the sealed room. The trapped cadets began to faint. One of them whispered that help would not come. But then the door burst open and fresh air rushed in. The humans pulled them out one by one without speaking. They carried the weak. They led the scared. They pushed through the smoke until all were safe, back on the upper level. The commander watched through the emergency cameras. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes followed every step. When the humans emerged carrying the last cadet, her voice came quietly. They did not even ask for permission. They saw danger and acted the next day. No lessons were given. The academy held a silent gathering. No one spoke for the first few minutes. Then the commander stepped forward and looked over the crowd. Yesterday, you were tested in a way no training program could prepare for. A real threat. A real moment of choice. And once again, the Deathworld Cadets acted without fear, without delay, and without reward. She paused. What you see in them is not strength alone. It is something else. It is the memory of a world that never forgives mistakes. It is the lesson of fire and flood and storm. It is the will to protect without question, even those who once mocked them. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of her words filled the air. Later that night, one of the alien cadets sat near a human in the mess hall. The human was eating slowly, not looking at anyone. The alien spoke without thinking too much. You are not like us. The human looked up, calm and still. That is true. What happened to your world? The human paused for a moment before answering. Taught us that comfort is a lie, that safety is an illusion, that pain makes you listen, that fear makes you move. And if you do not learn fast, you do not survive. The alien cadet sat silently for a while, then nodded. I think I understand now. The human did not reply and returned to the food. From that day, the academy shifted again. Cadets no longer saw the humans as a mystery. They saw them as a mirror showing what they lacked. They trained harder. They worked in silence. They watched the humans and learned, but deep inside the fear remained, not the kind that makes you run, the kind that makes you respect, the kind that makes you remember that when the time comes to choose between hesitation and action, between fear and duty, only those shaped by the fire will move without waiting. Only those from a death world. Real threat. It began with a small sound, at first a deep vibration that moved through the floor of the academy. Most cadets thought it was a routine drill or another simulation, but the instructors knew better. The lights flickered once, then again, then stayed red. A voice came through the speaker, not from the academy systems, but from the outer defense grid. An identified vessel approaching at high speed. No response to hails. Shields raised. Status unknown. Panic stirred. The command staff rushed to control stations, but half the systems were offline. Someone had cut the power supply from outside. No one could trace the signal. No one could open communications. The vessel was close now and growing larger on the display screens. A warning siren screamed across the station. This is not a drill. All cadets return to safe zones. Emergency lockdown activated. Stay in place until further notice, but not everyone followed those words. In the lower halls where training rooms and storage units lined the walls, the Deathworld Cadets moved in. Different direction. While others rushed toward safety, they walked toward the center chamber where weapons and emergency tools were kept. They did not speak. They understood each other with looks and movement. The vessel slammed into the docking bay like a beast with no warning. Fire and debris filled the air. An explosion tore open the outer wall. Creatures spilled out. They were not like any known species. No language, no signals, no technology, only claws and muscle and hunger. Their eyes burned with heat. Their movements were fast, and wild screams followed the cadets who had never faced real death. Froze. Some dropped to the ground. Others ran in every direction. The instructors tried to guide them, but the communication lines were already cut. Then came the humans. Without waiting for orders, they spread out in groups of 2. One took high ground, another guarded the injured. They moved like they had prepared for this every day of their lives. While the enemy advanced, the humans responded with strategy. They set up blockades using metal plates and furniture. They made traps from wires and power cells. They moved through smoke without losing direction. They pulled cadets to safety, even when it meant exposing themselves to danger. One was clawed across the arm. Another took a hit to the chest. They kept going. At the entrance of the medical bay, a group of alien cadets had locked the door and refused to open it. They feared the creatures and trusted no one. A human slammed a hand on the panel and shouted, "There are wounded out here. If you lock us out, they die. Make your choice." The door opened and the wounded were brought in. The humans took the lowest. Bunks gave up the clean water and stood watch at the door. They did not sleep. They waited outside. The enemy kept coming. They moved without fear. They tore through metal walls. They hunted in silence. But each time they met the humans, they were pushed back. Not with greater strength, but with greater resolve. In the control room, the command staff managed to restore part of the security feed. What they saw stunned them. The Deathworld Cadets had taken charge of defense. No formal rank, no high titles, just action. The commander leaned forward and spoke. They are not trained for leadership. They are not trained for war. They are shaped by it. Elsewhere, a group of younger cadets was trapped behind a broken gate. Fire closed in on both sides. One human saw them through a cracked window. Without speaking, she pulled a pipe from the wall and smashed the window frame. She reached in, grabbed 2 of the smallest and passed them through. Then she climbed in and helped the rest climb out, one by one. The last to exit was her. Her arm was burned, her leg cut. She said nothing. Everywhere across the station, the pattern was the same. When others panicked, the humans planned. When others ran, the humans stood firm. When others broke, the humans held the line. After 6 hours, the emergency forces arrived. The enemy ship was destroyed from orbit. The creatures vanished into fire and dust. The academy lights came back. The halls went silent in the aftermath. The wounded were treated, the dead were named, and the heroes were seen. Cadets from every world spoke the same words again and again. The humans saved us. They did not wait for orders. They did not ask for help. They just moved. Later, a council was held in the main hall. The survivors sat in silence. The commander stood at the center. Her voice was steady but heavy. We have always trained our cadets to face pressure, to lead with logic, to follow the chain of command. But yesterday that chain broke. What saved us was instinct, not protocol. What saved us was courage, not command. She looked at the human group, standing near the side wall. We gave them no medals, no titles, no extra tools. We gave them the same training as the rest, but they brought something else. They brought the lessons of their world. They brought the fire of their home. She paused, and now we all understand what that means. The crowd remained still. The humans looked around not with pride, not with ego, but with the eyes of those who had seen fire before and knew it would come again. They did not smile, they did not cry, they just waited for the next call, because fear is not their weakness, it is their beginning, and from that they rise always. The lesson remembered: the academy was no longer the same place. The walls still stood, the lights still blinked, the systems had been restored, but something in the air had changed. It was not just silence or caution, it was something deeper, something that stayed behind like a shadow after the fire is gone. Story of what happened spread fast across every deck and hallway. Cadets from distant wings repeated the same lines. They said the creatures came without warning, they said the alarms failed, they said everything went wrong. But then they always added one thing. The humans moved, that was the part no one forgot. Not the explosions, not the broken walls, not the cries in the darkness. The part that stayed in memory was the way the Deathworld Cadets stood up when everything else fell down. Instructors walked differently now. They still taught lessons, still gave orders, still pushed cadets to train harder, but their eyes carried a new weight. They had seen what textbooks could not teach. They had watched instinct win where theory failed in the mess hall cadets sat in. Groups like before, but now the humans had no empty chairs near them. Cadets from other worlds sat beside them, asked quiet questions, shared food, and listened. The humans answered when needed, but never told stories for praise. They never asked for thanks. One cadet from a planet of floating cities sat beside a human one evening. The alien had lost a brother during the attack. His hands shook as he spoke. "You pulled me from the rubble that day. I thought I was going to die. You could have kept running, but you stayed." The human looked at him and spoke in a voice without pride. "We do not leave our own behind. But I am not one of you. You are now." The alien said nothing after that. He just nodded and stayed there for a while, not alone anymore. Weeks passed. Repairs finished. Schedules returned. New training began, but no one forgot. The academy leaders met in private rooms and asked each other the same question again and again. Why did the humans act that way? How could they stay calm when chaos ruled? What made them move forward without command, without backup, without fear? They sent requests to Earth asking for reports. They asked for education files, survival statistics, climate data, and cultural insight. What they received shocked them. It was not just war zones or dangerous animals or wild storms. It was life itself. Life on Earth was never still. Forests burned and grew again. Oceans swallowed cities and people rebuilt. Disease came and was pushed back. Pain came and was carried, not avoided. A file from one human instructor said it best. "We are not shaped by safety. We are shaped by struggle. We learn to walk while things fall around us. We learn to speak while sirens scream. We grow under weight, not in comfort." That line was repeated in the Academy Council. It was marked and saved and placed at the top of the lesson files for new instructors. It became part of the curriculum. Back among the cadets, things also shifted. There were no longer jokes about humans. No longer whispers about weakness or wild stories meant to mock. Now there was respect, even fear, but not the kind that makes others hide. It was the kind that reminds them who to follow when the lights go out. Another simulation day arrived. This time all cadets were mixed into new squads. No one knew who would lead. The terrain was hard again, filled with traps and false signals. A small creature got injured early, and the team froze, not sure what to do. One human stepped forward, placed a cloth around the wound, lifted the creature, and kept walking. No one questioned the choice. No one argued. They followed. At the end of the simulation, the commander stood again before them all. Her face was steady, her voice clear. "Some of you come from strong worlds with long histories of peace. Some come from science cities or art colonies or floating labs. That is good, that is needed. But never forget what else the galaxy holds. Chaos does not ask for permission. Danger does not follow rules. In those moments, leadership is not about titles. It is about action." She pointed to the humans. They acted, a long silence followed. Then something rare happened. One by one, cadets from other worlds stood and raised a hand across their chest. It was not an official salute, not a learned gesture. It was respect. The humans did not return the gesture. They nodded once and walked away as they always did, without waiting for reward. That night stories were shared again, but they had changed. No longer strange tales or warnings. Now they were legends. They told of quiet humans with eyes like storms. They told of steady hands in fire and strong steps in darkness. They told of courage born in pain and calm born in chaos. And they always ended the same way. Now we know why every alien fears Deathworld Cadets, because they do not need orders to act, because they do not fear fire, because they never leave anyone behind, because when the worst comes, they are already walking through it, not away from it, but straight into it. The end.